They say water remembers. It remembers the riverbeds that carried it and the hands that cupped it. It also remembers the people who learned to sell it back to the thirsty. In South Africa, a quiet criminal innovation turned the country's oldest public trust into a cash business with muscle. It began like so many rackets begin, with a gap that looked like an opportunity and then became a habit. The tanker arrives, the hose hisses like a whisper at a locked door, and somewhere a valve is loosened by someone who knows just how to make a city limp. In this story, the victims are ordinary families and hospitals and mines that cannot run a shift without clean water. The villains are not the easy kind you spot on a wet night under a street lamp. They are discretionary committees, procurement officers, drivers with informal side hustles, and the men who stand behind them all. Call them the water tanker mafias. They flourish when pipes fail, and when oversight is softer than a handshake. They are the extortionists' favourite weather, a long dry spell in the soul of a country that once promised dignity in a tap. As policy analyst Rafaella Lipschitz observed in the spring of 2025, the absence here is not only of rain, it is governance, and the predators who move when governance blinks. First, the primer you never asked for. South Africa is not running out of water in the way a child runs out of pocket money. It is losing water the way a gambler loses cash at a table rigged by habit and age. Bulk suppliers such as Randwater see vast volumes vanish between reservoir and kitchen sink. Engineers call it non-revenue water. Everyone else calls it leaks, theft, and mismanagement. The percentages are obscene. In the heartland, the loss can approach half of what is pushed through the system, a hemorrhage that undermines health, investment, and patience. When the nation briefly reached more than 100 days without scheduled power cuts, foreign confidence brightened. Then the sound of empty pipes returned. A new embarrassment pacing the corridors of a government of national unity, trying to look dependable. This is where the tanker becomes a character. At first, it is a stopgap, a practical kindness on wheels, a municipal promise that the drought in your street will end by late afternoon. Contracts are signed. Solutions, the papers say. A week passes, then a month, and the tanker no longer looks like a bridge. It looks like a business with a future. The price moves a little. The route changes quietly. Sometimes, a pipe breaks again, a day after it was fixed, and the depot receives a call in a careful, practiced voice asking for an extension. In Tshwane, the political head for utilities, a man named Themba Fosi, spoke of tampered valves and shady work at reservoirs and hydrants. City officials began to hear the same tune in multiple neighbourhoods. The refrain was simple. Keep the tankers coming. Keep the money flowing. The old con has many hands. There are the large operators who win tenders with a nudge and a smile that costs a percentage. There are the small owners who learn how to make a pipeline fail as surely as a fuse. There are the drivers who fill municipal water into private tanks to resell it before dawn at rates that savour the scent of desperation. Dr. Ferial Adam of Watercan, a civil society group that takes water equity as a civic oath, described a sector where mafias dominate and dictate prices and terms. This is textbook capture, played not on a national utilities balance sheet, but on the pavements outside a clinic. The human psychology is predictable. Scarcity sharpens fear. Fear lowers resistance. Lower resistance makes the next demand feel like a favour. In eThekwini, the city that carries Durban's salt and heat, reporters from ground up watched unmarked trucks sell what should be free. Adam's mission, south of the city, became a case study in coercive convenience. Residents described buying municipal water from private hands, sometimes at 15 times the official rates. If you wanted a number for the business model, locals whispered that a big tanker could earn over 1 million rand in a few days when municipal trucks did not appear. What you hear beneath the arithmetic is something older. It is the tax the desperate pay to be left alone. Violence does not live far from a revenue stream like this. In KwaZulu-Natal, municipal vehicles tasked with water work were set alight. Between the winters of 2022 and 2023, a grim ledger grew in eThekwini's water unit. Employees were shot at work and on the road. An official was gunned down inside municipal offices in Springfield. Another was killed at his home. The pattern was not subtle. People trying to fix broken infrastructure were being warned that repairs shorten someone else's contract. The city's leadership, including the mayor, acknowledged the atmosphere of fear. Police made arrests after a contractor repairing lines in Inanda was ambushed. No definitive courtroom line has yet connected syndicate to shooter. In the street, the connection feels like common knowledge. Gauteng's story has its own tempo. Johannesburg and Pretoria are heavy with demand. The Lesotho Highlands Water Project, the great mountain to metro artery, has suffered severe delays. Population growth presses on ageing pipes. Municipalities in the province spent well over $100 million on tankers in recent years. In Hammanskraal, after a cholera outbreak linked to contaminated treatment works, tankers became a lifeline that did not end when the cameras left. A year later, households were still queuing under the Sunday. Think of this as a chronic condition disguised as an emergency. Emergencies attract budgets and bids. Chronic conditions attract syndicates. Tender tables are where the subtle magic happens. In Johannesburg, investigative journalists traced an eye-watering 3-year contract worth hundreds of millions of rand to companies fronted by 20-somethings with limited track records. The paperwork was proper. The resumes were thin. The sums were extraordinary. This is the charm of the white-collar end of the mafia ecology. There is rarely a brown envelope anymore. There are compliance documents all in a row, and there is access. The signature is not the crime. The ecosystem is. The national story is not kind to memory either. Years earlier, the state launched a program called War on Leaks under former President Jacob Zuma, meant to train a generation of artisans and stop the bleeding. The price tag was vast. The results were an empty glass. A later probe found irregular spending that mocked the rhetoric. Failed national initiatives guarantee a robust private tanker market. A failed fix is a promise to a criminal that tomorrow will look like yesterday. Meanwhile, the politics around the tap grow louder. The African National Congress lost its absolute majority for the first time since 1994. A 10-party government of national unity formed, with the Democratic Alliance taking seats beside the ANC like reluctant dinner companions. Into that delicately set table marched the economic freedom fighters, who saw opportunity in public thirst, leading a rain-soaked protest to the doors of Johannesburg Water and demanding an end to water shedding. For any coalition, water is not a policy. It is a calendar. You will be judged not by speeches at a podium, but by what flows at 6 in the morning when a family turns on the tap. The country's economy feels it in the bones. Investors forgive a lot when the lights stay on. They do not forgive a plant that must shut because the municipal supply stumbled and the tanker did not arrive. Water risk is business risk disguised as logistics. In a nation that sells the world platinum group metals, manganese and iridium, and that anchors regional security and trade, a tap that sputters is not a local embarrassment. It is a signal in global supply lines. In Washington, analysts read these signals because palladium, much of it mined in South Africa and Russia, is not just a shiny metal. It is an input in the semiconductors that live inside everything strategic. When water weakness deepens South Africa's dependence on quick foreign infrastructure cash, Beijing smiles and Washington frowns. That is not conspiracy theory. It is trade arithmetic and power politics made visible by a hose. Spend enough time in council chambers and you learn the theatre of blame. National points to local, local points to sabotage. Somewhere in the middle is a valve with a new scratch on it, and a driver who knows which foreman will not pick up the phone after 9. Civil society keeps the receipts. Groups like WaterCan build databases and WhatsApp tip lines. They collect photos of tankers at hydrants after midnight, and invoices that do not add up. Residents hesitate to report. Reporting can mean fewer deliveries or an angry knock. In rich suburbs, people film. In poorer wards, people look down at their shoes. That is how extortion survives, on the careful calibration of fear and need. You want the psychology because that is where the Highsmith story lives. This is not only about theft, it is about stage dependency. The criminal learns to behave like infrastructure. He becomes the piece you cannot live without. First he arrives when you are helpless, and he looks like a rescuer. Then he begins to set the tempo of your life. The message is always the same. Do not fix the pipe too quickly. Do not ask too many questions. Do not interrupt the delivery schedule. The threat is not shouted. It is implied. If you alter the routine, there will be a day without water. Economists could call it principal agent failure. A better word is hostage taking. The route out is not glamorous. It is procurement with teeth. It is protecting new capital projects with intelligence, fences, and prosecution instead of ribbon cuttings and statements. It is reviewing every tanker contract in the districts where reports spike, mapping which companies always seem to win the extensions, and assigning investigators who knock on doors with warrant books, not warning calls. It is instructing national authorities to charge specific officials personally when irregularities surface, because fining a municipality is a tax on the innocent. It is securing reservoirs like you would secure vaults, because they are vaults, holding the currency of public health. There are places to start where the ground is already cleared. Audit the tenders in Gauteng that grew fat during the worst outages and publish the findings in language an ordinary resident can read. Strengthen the link between the Department of Water and Sanitation, the Hawks and the National Prosecuting Authority so that a tampered valve is treated as sabotage of critical infrastructure, not merely vandalism. Make the tanker scheduling and GPS data public in real time. If a truck repeatedly refills at municipal taps and then parks behind a high fence for an hour before visiting a neighbourhood, let sunlight do the first kind of policing it always does. The coalition in Pretoria and the mayoral offices in the metros might prefer speeches about reform, but reform is a verb with muddy boots. It looks like replacing and monitoring valves in Bronkhorstspruit that have been tampered with before. It looks like prosecuting the network behind that Springfield office murder with the same focus the state once brought to organised crime in the ports. It looks like telling a contractor in Inanda that if he is ambushed again, the replacement crew will arrive with police and work under lights until the job is done. It is not brave. It is ordinary. Ordinary is what wins. International partners will come with offers, some generous, some predatory. The safest money is the kind that pays for skills, monitoring and community watchdogs, not for trucks with fresh decals. Fund the citizen lab that aggregates water quality tests from Hammanskraal street taps. Pay for an app that lets a grandmother in Adam's Mission record a tanker's registration and time of arrival without fear that the report will be used against her. Share the investigative techniques that follow procurement patterns, the way forensic accountants follow shell companies. Listen to the local engineers who have been shouting for years into the wind. There is one more psychology to resist. The fatalism that says, this is how it is now and always will be. Fatalism is the cardigan of the captured. The country has done harder things. It has unwound bigger patronage webs at power stations and in state-owned lenders. It can learn to make water boring again. If that sounds like a small dream, it is the kind a country is built on. A boring tap that turns on every morning at 6. A boring invoice that matches the work done. A boring procurement meeting where the youngest person in the room is the one asking the sharpest compliance question. In the end, you do not beat the water mafias in a montage. You starve them with redundancy. You fix the pipe, and then you fix the second pipe, and then you fix the cheap little valve that no one noticed, and then you do it again. You make the tanker a guest again, not a landlord. You turn the extortionist into a man with a truck, and nowhere urgent to be. You leave him standing there, feeling for the first time what it is like to be on the wrong side of a tap that finally remembers what it was built to do.